All right, welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who's pretty good at convincing everyone around him that he's brushed his teeth. I'm here to talk about Kevin Holland versus Stephen Thompson, Wonderboy. I'm going to go through the whole fight card here, which is an awesome card. It's not pay-per-view worthy or anything, but it's fucking awesome. I'm going to talk about the fights from beginning to end, a little preview, maybe a prediction and a bet. But at the end of the video, I'm going to recap my bets. So if you want to get down to brass tacks, which is an expression I keep using, even though I have no fucking clue what it means, then you go to the last chapter of the video. Okay, that way you won't have to stare and listen to my voice and look at my fat fucking face for fucking an hour or whatever. All right, let's get started. Wonderboy Thompson versus Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland's a minus 170 favorite over Wonderboy, which was a surprise to me. Spoiler. I think Kevin Holland is largely a favorite due to the age, meaning he's 10 years younger than Wonderboy, which is insane. 9 years younger, but almost 10. He's also got 3 inches of height and 6 inches of reach, which is significant in any fight, but certainly in a fight that's guaranteed to be contested on the feet, or almost guaranteed, I should say. So that's interesting, and that's what makes this a compelling matchup, that this is an accommodation, I want to say, on behalf of the UFC. The UFC they didn't screw Kevin Holland over. They accommodated him, but Holland stepped up and saved the UFC. UFC 2, whatever the fuck, when he stepped up and fought Chimaev on a day's notice. Kevin Holland went from being a sizable favorite to an impossible underdog. And he was treated like an underdog and strangled inside of 90 seconds. But that's not a path to victory for Wonderboy here. Let me get into the record. Kevin Holland is 23-8. He got 13 KOs, 6 submissions. That's 19 finishes of his 23 wins, and the remaining 4 are decisions. His 8 losses include 3 submissions and 5 decisions. He was submitted inside the UFC to Brendan Allen, outside the Rafael Lovato Jr., and he's a damn tough fighter. And the Kyle Daukaus fight, I forgot to mention, that doesn't count on his record. That's a no contest, but he was submitted in round 1. But again, he was knocked out with a headbutt in that fight, legitimately and evidently, I want to say. So 23-8 for Kevin Holland, but really what stands out is he's 13-0 in fights that have ended via KO or knockout, KO or TKO. He's got 13 KOs at welterweight and middleweight, and we've seen them, from on his back with the jiu-jitsu master, Jacare on top of him, really short punches. We've seen the longer punches, knocking out Joaquin Buckley with a straight right in round 3. And he's deceptively powerful, Kevin Holland, and that's his path to victory here, I want to say. That, or there's a chance he outpoints Wonderboy, but still, it's got me surprised to see him as a minus 170 favorite, to be honest. Reach and height are not nothing. They're important, and especially when they're sizable like that, 6 inches of reach. But Wonderboy Thompson is a guy who I would think has dealt with reach. He's a guy that's, well, let me get into it. He's 16-1-1, 16-6-1, 7 KOs, 1 decision, 1 submission, 8 decisions. His losses come 1 via knockout to Anthony Pettis, 5 via decisions. In the majority of his decisions, aside from the one to Darren Till, he's been out-wrestled, which I don't think that's a path to victory for Holland. Holland is a dangerous submission artist, and I'm hoping to see him bring that submission threat to Wonderboy, but Wonderboy's a guy who's been able to survive on the ground with Gilbert Burns. He's, even early on, surviving with Matt Brown in his second UFC fight or whatever. He's always impressed me. Defensively, his jiu-jitsu's been there. He's not some world beater or whatever. He's not some can beater. I don't expect him to hit too many triangle chokes against bums or anything. But Wonderboy hasn't been submitted fighting top-level fighters for 10 years or whatever inside the UFC. I have faith in his defensive jiu-jitsu overall. But I do think Kevin Holland is more dangerous than someone like Gilbert Burns, which I think I made this exact point against when he was fighting Khamzat Chimaev, that submission-wise anyway, that Gilbert Burns is much better than Kevin Holland. Of course, he'd win the jiu-jitsu match, and Kevin Holland's not going to submit Gilbert Burns. But against other opponents, I think Kevin Holland could find the submission before Gilbert Burns. He's got nifty little chokes, of course, Gilbert Burns knows every one of those chokes as well, but Kevin Holland, with his frame and his size, he's a very skilled choke artist, particularly, And again, I'm sure he knows his arm bars and knee bars, but I really like his Darce choke. I'm sure he's got a nasty anaconda, rear naked guillotine, whatever. He doesn't need to run through his opponents methodically with jiu-jitsu and wrestling like Gilbert Burns typically does to get the submission. Kevin Holland's more opportunistic, and I think that's what it's going to take to get a submission over Wonderboy. So even though I don't predict it, it's absolutely a possibility in this one. But again, I expect Wonderboy's jiu-jitsu to hold up. He's never been tapped. He's barely ever been mounted. I don't recall him being mounted. Maybe, in spots against Burns and Bilal. But Wonderboy's always defended himself very well on the ground. And on the feet, he's been hurt before. Again, knocked out by Pettis, rocked badly by Woodley, and certainly hittable. But generally speaking, he's kicked everyone's ass on the feet, including Darren Till. I don't know what the fuck happened with that decision still to this day. But Wonderboy, if Kevin Holland doesn't knock Wonderboy out, I think Wonderboy wins a decision. And gun to my head, I'm going Wonderboy via decision here. If you told me these two guys fought for 25 minutes and it's largely held on the feet, Wonderboy, despite the reach and the height disadvantage, with his movement and his style and his consistency and his overall output, I think he's too much for Kevin Holland on the feet. Kevin Holland, I think he will be reduced to, counter-striking and going for the knockout and, sitting down on more punches and just, losing the small battles, just trying to create a big one. And if that big moment never comes, again, I think Wonderboy wins the majority of the small moments and takes home a comfortable decision over 5 rounds. Now, Wonderboy is plus 140. His decision line is plus 400. That's way off. Way off. They should be much tighter, those two lines. So I think even if you're a Kevin Holland guy and you think Holland's going to knock him out, you think that'll be the, this is the fight where Wonderboy it's too much and he's too old and blah, 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 and whatever. You still have to see the value in Wonderboy via decision at plus 400. I mean, I would see that value in any fight. Any fight at welterweight, even against Francis Ngannou. I'd be like, Wonderboy by decision is plus 400. I think they dropped the ball there, and I absolutely pounced on that. Wonderboy by decision plus 400. And their odds, the over-under, reflect the money lines, meaning Kevin Holland is minus 170, and it going under 4.5 rounds is minus 170. Wonderboy's plus 140, and it going over 4.5 rounds is plus 140. And I do think those, very closely reflect their paths to victory. I suppose Holland can win a decision, and I suppose Wonderboy can get a finish. But generally speaking, I've got Holland via knockout or Wonderboy via decision. Gun to my head, I'm going Wonderboy. That's what a gun looks like. And plus 400. Again, I'll take Wonderboy by decision. And also Kevin Holland, let me just say this at the end of the main event recap here. I don't like the way he sounded in his pre-fight interview. Blaming the UFC, and he expressed a lot of dismay and disappointment with the UFC. Not so much for the way they're treating him, because, again, he's being accommodated right here with this fight very well. And in addition to, what I'm hoping was 7 figures added onto his salary, his contract for the Chimaev fight, night of, or whenever that fight was booked. But I'm sure he was compensated very well for that, because he did save the card and he took his ass kicking. But still, it's got me worried about this guy being a little too discouraged, especially in the middle of the fight. Kevin Holland's an emotional fighter, starts playing to the camera and starts talking to Khabib outside the cage and whatever. I could see him falling apart a little bit mentally if Wonderboy's dancing around him and frustrating him. Because 3 times in the last week, I've heard Kevin Holland talk about, fuck it. Why do I need to fight? I could just go home and smoke weed and play video games on Twitch and make money, I'm assuming. And, if he can, fucking go ahead, whatever. But as far as this fight goes, it's something that's got me a little concerned. Not with him falling apart and getting finished, but with him falling apart and losing a decision, without much spirit there. So it's only something that just makes me a little more confident in picking Wonderboy, but not much. I don't look too much into all that outside bullshit, but it's something. And again, the pick and bet Wonderboy via decision. All right. RDA Barberena, very interesting fight. Barberena is one of my favorite fighters, and this is a great underdog spot for him, plus 375. Yeah, I'd love to see him get the victory, but I'm not picking it, and I probably will bet on it because I'm a degenerate, and the odds are so steep. And there's no value on RDA side at all, I'll say. But I do expect RDA to win here. RDA is a workhorse. He is the smaller guy and whatever, and his chin is, he's been knocked out in his last fight to Rafael Fiziev, and he's been knocked out a few times throughout his career, but it's a long career. He was knocked out, on average, like once every 5 years. So I don't think he's got a bad chin, and if his knockouts were a little more clustered together, where, especially later in his career, I might be swinging towards Barberena, but I trust RDA's chin, and I certainly trust his work rate, cardio, wrestling, and whatever else to follow Jason Witt's blueprint. Yeah, Jason Witt beat Barberena. I know Barberena's beaten Robbie Lawler since then, and I do think Barberena's got that style where he could hang with some really good fighters, some of these strikers. He's, really good Ponzinibbio types, but he's too slow, too plodding, too whatever for a guy that's well-rounded and grappling-based like RDA. RDA, I expect, generally speaking, to follow Jason Witt, Colby Covington's blueprint and win a decision here. There's not much value there, minus 125 for him to win a decision, which I don't like any negative odds, minus odds for a prop bet. But that is my prediction. The bets, maybe I did sprinkle something on Barberena. Barberena winning via knockout, absolutely is worth a bet. Plus 1,800 if he gets it done in round one, which not only covers a TKO, really, but the chin. And Barberena, generally speaking, he's a guy who builds. Even though he's been knocked out twice by Vicente Luque and Randy Brown, both at the very end of the fight in round 3, I think Barberena is a guy who builds and generally has success in round 3. Rounds 2 and 3 takes over. That classic Warley Alves performance, which I called way back then. And I called it exactly. He wins round 2 and round 3. But that's not a path to victory against RDA. I don't think he's going to build, stuff takedowns, and take over the fight. I think his path to victory is separating RDA from his consciousness. So a plus 1,800 for him to do that in round 1. Yeah, I'll sprinkle, but that's all bullshit. RDA via decision. All right. Matheus Nicolau versus Max Schnell is the third fight, and this is an excellent fight. Wide odds here. Schnell's a big underdog, which has me tempted to bet on him. But still, Nicolau is a minus 380 for a reason. He's a damn good fighter. We've seen him take some really good victories here, especially over Manel Kape inside the UFC, which was a close fight. But I did think Nicolau won that fight. Or, he could have won that fight anyway. It wasn't like it was a bad decision. And Nicolau, he's a well-rounded guy. He's 18-2-1, 4 KOs, 5 submissions, and 9 decisions. His 2 losses are both via first-round knockout, though, which is unique for flyweights. He lost to Dustin Ortiz and to Pedro Nobre, who used to fight in the UFC way back when. I think he was the guy who quit in a fight, and Dana White said, never again with this guy. Could be wrong, but I want to look it up or whatever anyway. But Matt Schnell, he's 16-7. He's got 2 inches of height and 4 inches of reach on Nicolau, which is not nothing. And Schnell, I don't know if he's the guy that can make the most of that reach. He's a guy who does fight very tall, and, he doesn't really... I don't know. He's more of a counter striker too, Schnell, on his feet. It seems like, even though he rocked Brandon Royval coming forward with a big right hand, he's sneaky with those uppercuts. And I really like Matt Schnell's footwork on his feet. He's got a record of 16-7. Only 2 are via knockout, but they are knockouts. I haven't seen either one of them, but despite looking for them, but they both happen in the first 20 seconds of the fight. So those are knockouts, which is good for him. And he's got 9 wins via submission, which that's his bread and butter. I don't know how many triangles he's got, but he's got at least 3 in the UFC. In his last one, we saw a classic, one of the best comebacks ever against Suma Derji. I love how Schnell and Elkins are fighting on this same card. Those are 2 of my favorite fighters. And for the same reason, really. They're both tough sons of bitches, especially Elkins. But Schnell is more of a jiu-jitsu guy, and definitely, even though Nicolau, he's never been submitted, and he's got really sound jiu-jitsu, I think Schnell can submit anybody. I think he can submit anybody. Just he's so crafty, and especially early on when he's moving well. He's particularly quick off his back. He's got a great guard, and that's something that'll always be there for him throughout his career. But he's also, his 7 losses I should get into. He's got 3 KO losses, 2 submissions, 1 decision. And he's really got 3 submissions if you count Tim Elliott on The Ultimate Fighter. All 3 of his submission losses come via guillotine choke. And I think they're all in round 1. Oh, no, round 2 maybe. I don't know. But, no, Royval was round 1. Tim Elliott, I think, was the end of round 1. Whatever. I think they're all in round 1. But regardless, Matt Schnell, he's got 3 losses via submission. They're all via guillotine. Nicolau doesn't have a guillotine victory in his 5 submissions, but he does have 2 Japanese neckties. And I'm sure he knows what a guillotine choke is anyway. So I think either one could submit the other one or knock the other one out. Schnell, I didn't get into Schnell's knockout losses. He's got 3 knockout losses. Hector Sandoval, Rob Font, bantamweight, and Alexander Pantoja, who's, a big problem at flyweight for anybody, one of the best in the world. It's forgivable losing to those guys, but still, to have 3 knockout losses at 125, I think he does have a questionable chin. And I mentioned that in his last fight against Suma Derji. I think I predicted Derji would knock him out, and then after the fight, I expressed concern because he did knock him out like 6 times, despite never knocking him down. And somehow Schnell, with he ate 10 concussions or whatever, and he ended up taking over that fight and getting one of the best comebacks ever, and another submission via triangle choke, his signature move. So Schnell is tough. I don't trust his chin. I don't trust either one of their chins. And I don't trust Schnell's overall defense. I think he's more likely to get submitted, but I really like faith in his offense. So my overall bet for the fight is the under. I like the under at -110. I think it's under 2.5 rounds. I think it will hit. Either one of these guys is good enough to submit the other one, and both of them are fragile enough to get knocked out by each other. I think Nicolau's the harder puncher, more likely to get the knockout, but Schnell is deceptive on his feet. He's got some tricky striking, and he's good at fighting forward and back. We saw him again crack Royval moving forward. We've seen him with some tricky uppercuts. And he can throw down too, as we saw in his Suma Derji fight. So the under is the play, -110. I also like some prop bets, which I'll get into towards the end. Schnell and, Schnell via round 1 flat, +800, and Nicolau by knockout. I like, especially in rounds 1 and 2, +650 and +900. Because, again, I think he's more likely to crack Schnell's chin. But anyway, the overall prediction, I guess I'll go Nicolau via knockout, round 2. But I'm hoping Schnell wins. I'm really hoping for a finish. And I'm hoping one of my props hit. All right, next up, Tuivasa versus Sergey Pavlovich. These guys have similar stats, kind of overall similar. Everything but the reach really is similar. He's 30 years old. He's got 1 inch of height, 9 inches of reach, if I wrote that down correctly, against Tuivasa. Sergey is a big, strong, fast starter, and he's a powerful guy, 16-1. I believe he's got 13 KOs and 3 decisions, and the 1 KO loss or TKO was to Alistair Overeem, ground and pound, which, that's not really a path to victory by Tuivasa. Tuivasa could finish via ground and pound, but he won't be taking him down easily like Overeem did. Tuivasa is 15-4, or maybe that's 18-4. I don't know. I think he's 15-4. No submissions. Overwhelming majority of his victories are via knockout. He was TKO'd by Cyril Gane, TKO'd by Junior Dos Santos, submitted by Sergey Spivak. He's been defeated more ways. Seems like he's less complete of a fighter than Sergey. I do think Sergey would have more for him on the ground. And as far as the fight and the prediction, look, I'm staying away from this overall. I'm staying away from it. I suppose I should bet on Ty because in general I'm staying away from this because I don't trust any bet, and Ty is damn near a 2-1 underdog. But I'm not going to bet on Ty because I kind of lean towards Sergey, just not enough to bet on him. If I had to give you a prediction, I'd go Sergey wins via round 1 knockout. But by doing that, he's going to be playing right into Tai Tuivasa's hands. Tai Tuivasa is a dangerous fighter. I think he can match Sergey's knockout power, maybe not match his speed. But Tai is also a very good kicker as well. And, I don't think it's going to take long for this fight to end, regardless of how it goes or what the reason is. Even if Tai Tuivasa's leg kicks are the story of the fight, it's still going to produce a finish within a round probably. I think this one ends in round 1. The under is minus 220, which there is something there. I think that's for under 2.5 rounds, which is really enticing. But I don't love it either. It's not the greatest odds, but still, minus 220, it's damn near a lock in my opinion. If you wanted to sprinkle that on a parlay, on BetUS, the over and under can go on a parlay. That's primarily my bet. My prediction, I'd go Sergey gets it done. I think it looks similar to the Derek Lewis fight. Maybe a little longer, I'm assuming. But in general, I would think he overwhelms Tai, and it happens early. Of course, he may fear Tai Tuivasa's striking prowess and try to, fight a little slowly. Maybe try to slow it down and maybe even try to mix things up. Tai Tuivasa's probably an easier guy to out-grapple than Derek Lewis. But still, the way he fought Derek Lewis, that's what I have to look to for the way he's fighting Tai Tuivasa, and I think it's going to produce mayhem. I'll lean towards Sergey, but my heart's not into it. All right. Next up, Jack Hermansson versus Roman Dolidze. Roman Dolidze stepping up on short notice, replacing Derek Brunson. Roman Dolidze came off a big win just a few weeks ago over Phil Hawes. Looked fucking awesome. And I said in that fight, Roman Dolidze, his heel hooks, going his penchant for heel hooks and leg locks is going to get him in trouble one day. And then he laced up Phil Hawes' leg, tweaked it, didn't get anything out of it, but Phil Hawes stood up and his leg was fucked up and he proceeded to get knocked out. So I looked like Joe Jerkoff, and Roman Dolidze had an excellent performance there. But here, I think his leg locks could get him into trouble. If he starts playing leg lock with Jack Hermansson, who, Jack, even though he's been submitted and whatever, he's still a very good top grappler. Very good top grappler. He was submitted by Cesar Ferreira, who's another good top grappler. But I don't see Roman Dolidze running through Jack like that. And I think if he engages in leg locks, he's going to end up paying by letting Jack sit down, put his weight on the leg, and maybe find a guillotine from there in some sort of Nate Diaz, Gray Maynard 1 on the Ultimate Fighter type of scramble. But overall, I expect Jack to win. I guess if I had a gun to my head, I'd go decision, and I think largely it's due to the striking. Dolidze's a bigger man. He's got 3 inches of height, and I think Jack might have 1.5 inches of reach, unless I wrote that down on the wrong side, which would be weird considering he's given up 2 inches of height. But either way, very tight reach. And Jack, with the way he looked against Chris Curtis, I trust him more. Roman Dolidze, he's a guy who, I don't trust his gas so much. Against Staropoli, Trevin Giles, I didn't like his gas there. And even against John Allen, whatever, I forget his name exactly. He's got a few names, but, John Allen, the guy that fought Jacoby and whoever the hell else. I don't trust Dolidze's gas tank that much, even though I trusted it a little more against Phil Hawes. But Jack Hermansson, he's a very well-rounded fighter. He's proven to have been getting better on the feet, especially since he's suffered some recent setbacks to Sean Strickland, whoever the hell else on the feet, Marvin Vettori, and Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier is the guy that took him out. And Dolidze, I don't think he's got the... I do think he's got the wild striking to take anyone out. Dolidze's a wild man. He can knock him out with some spinning shit like he did Michel Pasternak outside the UFC. But Jack's got a good chin, generally speaking. Only Cannonier got him out. And I do think it'll hang tough against Dolidze. And then from there, it's a technical battle. And I expect Jack to win. I expect Jack to win wrestling, jiu-jitsu, grappling, wrestling, striking, grappling, and cardio. I think overall, he might win every one of those departments, but certainly in cardio, I expect him to win. And that's got me picking Jack Hermansson. I think I'll take him to win by decision, but I can't trust it. In fact, I think there might be a prop to play on round 3. There's probably a round 3 prop that's worth something there against Roman Dolidze, just based on how he's looked. But overall, I like Jack's money line at minus 190. Covers the decision, obviously, and the KO. And the gas tank failing. I didn't write down the prop bet. Yeah, I just bet on minus 190 Jack Hermansson. All right. Next up, Eric Anders versus Kyle Daukaus. I know I said Daukaus for like a few months, but I think I'm back to Daukaus. Kyle Daukaus is 6 years younger, 29. He's 2 inches taller, and he's got 1 inch of reach. He is 11-3 overall. His 3 losses come twice via decision to Brendan Allen and Phil Hawes, and once via knockout to Roman Dolidze, who knocked him out and smashed his face with a knee in the clinch. And that was a really rough loss. It seemed like his face was smashed, probably scarred him for life, but apparently not enough, because here he is, he's back, and he's fighting Eric Anders. So, Kyle Daukaus back on the horse. And Eric Anders, look, he's 14-7. He's a tough out for a lot of fighters. He's a big, strong athlete, and he's a very functional athlete. He's not... He's going to fight well for 3 rounds in most cases. We've seen him get his gas tank give him problems, but we've also seen him thrive, where his gas tank was the difference maker. I did think he got the better of Junyoung Park in his last fight, but again, that was one where his gas tank kind of bit him in the ass. Junyoung Park won round 3, and the cookie crumbled his way on the judges' cards. But I did think Anders got the better of him overall. Still, he is... Eric Anders is 14-7. He's got 8 KOs, 1 submission, 5 decisions. His 7 losses, he's been knocked out once to Thiago Santos in a prolonged beating. But other than that, his chin's never failed him. He was submitted once to Andre Muniz, who is Andre Muniz. And he's been beaten with 5 decisions, a lot of them very close. Not the Khalil Roundtree one, but, the Machida fight and the Elias Theodoro, Christoph Jocko. Well, not really the Jocko fight, but still. Anders has been in a lot of tough fights, And all of his losses come inside the UFC. And my point is, 14-7 is not the prettiest record, but this is a guy who absolutely belongs here. And again, I thought he won his last one, so it could be looking at a 15-6 record, which instantly you recognize is much prettier. Kyle Daukaus, I expect to win, though. I just think his jiu-jitsu is going to be there for him, and Eric Anders is a guy who is too sloppy to avoid playing into Daukaus' strengths. Anders can win with physicality, being rough, but overall, he's too sloppy. Kyle's too technical, and I don't think Anders is going to be able to reduce the fight to a brawl. And if he does, I think he's got to get a finish early, because it's not something he can sustain. Daukaus is bigger, taller, longer, and he's much more technically sound. On the feet as well, but certainly on the ground. I expect him to control Anders on the ground. Anders, I don't even know how it'll get there. I do think Kyle can take him down, but again, Anders is a big, strong athlete, but still, he's just so sloppy and technically not sound, where I just find him stumbling into Kyle Daukaus' world in one way or another. Could be Anders even shooting on Daukaus and Daukaus making him pay with some counter chokes and whatever. But In one way or another, Daukaus is going to take over this fight. And Anders, that rough physicality, it's not going to be the difference maker, like it was for Roman Dolidze. In fact, I think that's his real path to victory, is getting it done early, like Dolidze did. But after that, I see him falling apart, really, and Daukaus taking over. The prediction is Daukaus wins a decision, and did I even bet on that? And I bet on Daukaus winning a decision plus 125 and the submission for round 1 and 2, because I think it's more likely for him to get it early, like Andre Muniz did, plus 750 and plus 1,000, the prop bets. And that's it I bet on for that fight. All right, next up, Niko Price versus Philip Rowe. Philip Rowe is 9-3. He's got 4 or 5 inches of reach on Niko Price. He's 6'3", got 3 inches of height there. These guys are similar in age. But Niko Price has the experience. He's 15-5 overall, been in the UFC for a long time, 7 years or so by now. He's got a record, again, a 15-5, 10 KOs, 3 submissions, 2 decisions. He's a killer. And his losses are 3 KOs, 1 submission, 1 decision. He's kill or be killed. That's what makes Niko Price a lot of people's favorite fighter. He's fucking wild. I'll be the 100th guy to mention that he's gotten knockouts from wild positions, up kicks on James Vick, and ground strikes, whatever, from his back on Randy Brown, which was just, that's such a cool fucking knockout. But he's a long, tall, weird guy. He's fighting a longer, taller, weird guy here, or weirder guy maybe, in Philip Rowe. And I expect Niko Price to win, I'm betting on Phil Rowe winning via knockout because the odds are fucking insane, but I'm expecting Niko Price to win. Niko Price, he's only been, he's been beaten much more, obviously, but he's been beaten by killers. Vicente Luque twice, and Al Hassan, which is, Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Say what you will about him, he's not the greatest overall fighter, but on the feet, strike for strike, he's as deadly as anybody. And Niko, though, he's a killer himself. He's a killer. A lot of those wins that he has, there were fights he was losing. Even his debut against Alex Morono. Morono was kicking his ass, and then with like 2 seconds left in the round, Niko had one little, sprint of offense and knocked him out against the cage. Same goes for Tim Means. I think Tim Means was kicking his ass in that fight, and then he got knocked out. And, of course, the Randy Brown and James Vick knockouts were obviously from a disadvantageous position. So Niko is always just 1 second away from getting a knockout. And he's fighting a guy in Philip Rowe who is 9-3 overall. I think he's definitely a finisher. He's got great jiu-jitsu, Philip Rowe, really good jiu-jitsu. He's got 5 KOs, 4 submissions. And his 3 losses, are 1 KO early in his career and then 2 decisions. One of which came in the UFC to Gabriel Green, which was a very close fight and a damn good performance from Philip Rowe in a debut. But since then, Philip Rowe's got 2 knockout wins, and they're comebacks, both in round 2 against Jason Witt and whoever the fuck else. But who else? I don't know. Either way, Philip Rowe is a dangerous fighter. He's bigger, taller, got significant reach, and I do think he's got a lot of power in his punches. There's room for him getting a knockout over Niko Price, who, despite me having faith in his chin and picking him to win, he has been knocked out 3 times. So I'm taking Price to win. I like his overall striking better. I do think, he wins the point battle despite the reach and the height disadvantage. I think Niko's just overall a better striker. More straight down the middle strikes as well, as opposed to just Philip Rowe countering with, his reach, which it's a good enough style for, a guy that I think is primarily a jiu-jitsu guy, throwing his hands, he's got power and he limits his striking to his power counters. And it's worked for him, inside the UFC, at the UFC level. But Jason Witt has an awful chin. Niko Price doesn't, despite the losses. So I'm taking Niko Price. I like his money line, minus 145, because I do trust Rowe's durability after seeing him fight Gabriel Green. But Niko Price is so dangerous and such a killer that I can't trust him to win a decision. I'm not picking against Niko Price's own offensive prowess. So I'm just taking the money line. And as for the prop bets, I like Rowe getting a knockout. It's insane. Plus 1,000, 1,500, 2,200 for rounds 1, 2, and 3. Bet US doesn't just do flat knockout odds, which if they did, you'd see this at plus 400 at least for him to win via knockout throughout the whole 15 minutes. But I do think those odds are juicy on a guy like Rowe, who will be fighting someone who's going to accommodate, his striking, who's going to accommodate his style there. And maybe give him that fight that, the fight that he wants. I don't know if he even wants to be on the ground with Nico Price, despite his jiu-jitsu. Nico Price is a tricky submission artist himself, but he's dangerous. And I see Nico Price being, he's a mauler. And I don't think he wants to be on the bottom of Nico Price, just for the ground and pound itself. So, the prediction, I'll go Price wins a decision, but the bets, Price minus 145, because the knockout odds aren't too juicy, and I can't trust the decision, even though it is kind of juicy. And Rowe via knockout, the odds are too juicy for me to pass on, I should say. All right. I'm a fucking idiot. I realize that when I talk, But anyway, you're here, so enjoy the idiot. Next up, Angela Hill versus Emily Ducote. I'll just get into this. I'm not going to pick either fighter, and I'm not going to bet on either fighter. I mean, I'll give you a pick because I feel like I have to. I'll go Ducote because I've seen Hill on the wrong end of enough decisions, and I do think Ducote has wrestling. That Hill just, even though Hill's got defensive wrestling, it's something that hasn't been there for Hill too often. So I'll go Ducote, but not enough to pick her even at even odds like this, or slightly favored odds. She's minus 125. Hill is minus 105. And for them, either one to win a decision, I think it's plus 140. If I felt strongly one way or the other, I would absolutely jump on it. But I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I do think Ducote's got better boxing. But I think Hill has a damn good striking overall. Her Muay Thai, and I trust her to be a little more light on her feet. I expect her to dance around Ducote a little more, and I think she's going to strike better from the outside, although on the inside, that's where her Muay Thai will shine. But in the middle range, where the hands are the story of the fight, I think Ducote wins that battle, and also I'm inclined to think she would hit a takedown if she attempted 2 or 3 of them. So I'll go Ducote wins a decision, but my heart's not into it. I'm not betting on either fighter here, and I feel comfortable because this is an Angela Hill fight. You're getting burned one way or the other. All right. Next up, Scott Holtzman versus Clay Guida. Holtzman returning after a 1.5-year layoff. He's 39 years old, which is very old, which is appropriate because he's fighting Guida, who's 40 years old. Holtzman should have 2 inches of height, and the reach is pretty even, I guess, if I didn't write it down. Holtzman is 14-5 overall, 5 KOs, 2 submissions, 7 decisions. He's been knocked out twice in his last 2 fights against Beneil Dariush and Mateusz Gamrot, which there's no shame in losing to either of those guys. And he also lost 3 decisions to Drew Dober, Josh Emmett, and Nick Lentz. Nick Lentz is the fight Clay Guida wants to look to here. Lentz was able to out-grapple Scott Holtzman, and Lentz is a tricky fighter, though. Lentz was a tricky fighter. Very tricky, deceptively good. Clay Guida, there's not too much deceptive about him, aside from his movement, I guess. But Clay Guida, he's not so tricky. He's just in your face, trying to run through you with wild aggression. On the feet, Guida is a comfortable striker. He's, solid defensively, too. His chin, anyway. He's been knocked out a few times to, who the fuck knocked him out? Brian Ortega and someone else. But very rarely does he get knocked out. He's got 22 losses, 2 knockout losses, 11 submissions. That's his primary weakness, and 8 decisions, which I guess is enough of a weakness. His 37 wins, he's got 14 submissions, 7 KOs, and 15 decisions. He's a grinder, Clay Guida, in case you didn't know. And I don't see him having success against Scott Holtzman here. Holtzman, I think, is the bigger, stronger athlete, and I expect him to win this fight via decision, I'd say, but I expect him to get the better of exchanges overall, and for him to rough Clay Guida up. I think it looks similar to like the Bobby Green type of fight, where it could be close, and I think it'll be closer than that. But I do think Scott Holtzman wins a fight that's largely contested on the feet, and he does so with power being the primary difference maker. Of course, he was knocked out twice in his last two fights, and since then he's been off for a year and a half, and he's 39 years old. So despite Clay Guida being 40 and whatever the fuck else, I think there's a little room for a knockout, a prop bet on Clay Guida. Clay Guida winning via knockout round one. Let me see this shit. Is plus 1,500. That's a bet against the chin, the round one knockout, and I'm absolutely going to play that. Of course, you could play either one of them winning a decision by plus 175 or plus 200, and I've played Scott Holtzman winning a decision, plus 175. I think, I don't like his overall offensive prowess. I don't think he's able to get Guida out of there, but I think he's able to stifle Guida and to defend takedowns and win the battle on his feet. So I got Holtzman via decision, and I'm betting on it plus 175. And of course, I hedged with the fluke fucking Guida knockout round one. Next up, Mark Diakese versus Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson is 20-18. What's that? Kevin Lee's shit-talking comment at that press conference years ago is coming closer and closer to fruition. He said, Michael Johnson's had 30 fights, won half of them, ain't killed a motherfucker yet. He's out here talking about he's going to kill someone or whatever. Well, he's almost got 40 fights, and he's damn near won half of them. 20-18, 9 KOs, 2 submissions, which is weird to even think about, and 9 decisions. His losses come 2 via knockout, 9 via submission, and 7 decisions. The knockouts are to Justin Gaethje and Josh Emmett. So, Diakese, look, he's got the power, I'd say, to knock anyone out, just looking at him, so I suppose it's possible, but he's not the knockout artist we thought he was, back when he was knocking out Teemu Packalén. But Diakese has turned into a bit of a wrestler in his last few fights. I think his wrestling has really shown up for him. And that's good, because he's fighting a guy that you really need wrestling to beat. Not always, again, Gaethje, Emmett, but generally speaking, you need wrestling to beat Michael Johnson. And it's absolutely the easiest path to victory for Diakese. I don't know if he's got it looks like he's got the wrestling for MJ. MJ doesn't have, Michael Johnson is MJ. Doesn't have, I talk to you like you're fucking stupid. Of course you knew that, but whatever. I just started rolling into MJ. MJ. So I figured I'd fucking explain it. Anyway, MJ, he is, that's always going to be his weakness, overall grappling. We've seen him lose on the ground in one way or another to Thiago Moises, which wasn't conventional. It's not like he ran through him on the ground, but he laced up a leg after getting dominated by Johnson. Stevie Ray, Darren Elkins, Khabib, whatever, kind of redundant there. But Clay Guida, Michael Johnson is a beatable fighter, and Diakese, young fighter, 29 years old, coming into his own, got all the athleticism in the world, and he's shown that he started to gear it all towards being a grappler. I think he wins this fight. And I can't wait to bet on his submission props, but that's it. Other than that, I'm predicting he wins a decision and betting on Michael Johnson, because he's Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson's the guy that could knock out fucking Cyril Gane, and then in his next fight, he's going to lose to fucking Sue Maderji. Michael Johnson, by decision, is plus 400. I really like that, because I think that's his only path to victory here. Diakese has an awesome chin. He's been rocked a little bit. What was it? Dan Hooker, I think, uppercutted him into a guillotine or whatever. But his chin's held strong, and Johnson's not going to submit Diakese, I'd say. So I like Johnson via decision plus 400 as the only real bet here. But again, my pick is Diakese wins a decision, and even that I'm not going to bet on. The only thing I'm going to bet on once they're available is Diakese winning via submission in the middle of the fight. I hope those are juicy odds. If they're not juicy, I won't bet on them. But for a guy that's only got one submission victory. I'm hoping to see something juicy there, because I just think if he's following that blueprint, if he's following that game plan where he's taking Michael Johnson down, and he does have the wrestling to do it, I just think Michael Johnson, with anyone on his back, even though, he's gained all the skills in the world and he knows how to survive, in general, he's just not a survivor. So I would sprinkle something on that, but my heart's not into it. Diakese via decision is the pick. All right, next up, Jonathan Pearce versus Darren Elkins. Darren Elkins is my favorite fighter, just to give you a little disclosure, and I am backing Darren Elkins here. I see what everyone else sees. Pearce is the younger, better version of Darren Elkins. He's 8 years younger. He's an inch taller. Must have some reach. I don't fucking know. But he's a comeback artist, Jonathan Pearce. He's a guy who builds. He's got a record of 13-4, 9 TKOs, 2 submissions, 2 decisions. His 4 losses are 1 via KO, 2 via submission, and 1 decision. He lost a bunch earlier in his career. He's lost once inside the UFC, and it was to Joe Lauzon. Joe Lauzon is a first-round beast. Like, particularly, he's a first-round beast more than anybody else. And that was just, the perfect matchup for Joe Lauzon. Because Pearce, again, he may be a bit of a slow starter, and he does build, just like Elkins. Even though Elkins can have a good first round, like I guess any fighter can. But generally, these guys build and take over fights. And Pearce has a lot of second-round finishes. He's got 9 KO victories. 6 of them come via second-round finish. 2 of them come via third-round finish. And just 1 in the first round. Just about any other fighter's record in any other weight class, it's going to be the reverse, where the overwhelming majority of his finishes, especially outside the UFC and the regional level, come in round 1. That's probably the case with Elkins, even though I haven't looked at his record. Elkins, you can tell from watching him fight at the UFC level, he's not the best athlete, and he's not the best striker and whatever. But I bet you he's wiped out a lot of fighters early in round 1. But Pearce, even though both guys are, comeback artists, Pearce, the proof is in the pudding. Even though we haven't seen him fight at a high level for a long time like Elkins, the record doesn't lie. He's lost 3 times in round 1. The one to Joe Lauzon, again, round 1 beast. And even though it was a KO or TKO, it was on the ground. He was caught on the ground with a deep whizzer and just pounded out. And the 2 submissions were both in round 1. And they're both good submission artists, too. Guys that seem to have a penchant for submissions. And one was a a toe hold in round 1, and the other one was a rear naked choke. I think a rear naked choke. Yeah, rear naked choke. And then his other loss, a decision. Pearce is a guy who, again, he's taken over fights. He's looked really good against Omar Morales, Makwan Amirkhani, Christian Rodriguez, whoever the hell else. And if he wasn't fighting Darren Elkins here, I would be all over Jonathan. Well, I guess I wouldn't at those odds. Minus 460. I'm not getting all over anybody for that. But I'd be much more comfortable saying he gets a finish in this fight if he wasn't fighting Elkins. Elkins, he's, 38. He's never going to look like he's the most comfortable fighter on his feet. He's a guy that I think he always gets wobbled. I don't even think he's hurt. He's like a weird fighter, He's got great skills everywhere. Deceptively good striking, Darren Elkins. But it's never going to look good. Not only visibly, him, just the way he strikes, he's taking these, stumbling around a little bit, the way he eats shots, but also the way he gets cut. He's a guy that can fight anybody, a kid, and he's going to get cut. It's going to be a bloody war, even though he's beating the shit out of the kid. But it's not a good look. Optics has never been on Elkins' side, but much like Jonathan Pearce, he's a guy that just builds and builds and takes over fights. The countless examples, Mirsad Bektik, he's gotten a lot of finishes later in his career, in the UFC career, but his whole UFC career is comebacks. Losing round 1 to Michael Johnson, Mirsad Bektik, Jarek Minner, and the decisions back in his career, in the early part of his career, to Godofredo Pepe, and Hatsu Hioki, and Diego Brandao, And Elkins takes over in round 2 in every one of those fights, aside from Bektik. It took the end of round 3 for him to take over that one. But he's a guy that has heart for days. He's been put away, a few times, 5 times overall. But generally speaking, the only guys that have gotten him that have run through him were Chad Mendes and Chad Mendes, Charles Oliveira, of course, and Cub Swanson. Cub Swanson he looked so good in that fight, and Darren never really got going. I picked Darren to win that fight, but I knew on the feet he'd be outmatched, and he just wasn't able to impose his wrestling, and Cub looked as good as he ever looked in that one. But Chad Mendes is Chad Mendes, one of the hardest punchers in featherweight history. Charles Oliveira is Charles Oliveira, the only guy to submit Elkins. And aside from that, Elkins has held tough, even in the loss to Ricardo Lamas. He had to be beaten nearly to death for the fight to be stopped. He's not going to quit. He's not Makwan Amirkhani. Not to shit on Makwan, because Makwan, I don't think he's a quitter either, but he's got a horrible gas tank. And he doesn't have the greatest heart. Even though he may not be a quitter or whatever, his heart's not an asset for him like it is for Elkins or Pearce. So, overall in this fight, I think I see what everyone else sees. Jonathan Pearce, I do think he's, the bigger, stronger, younger guy, better and whatever. But I thought the same shit when Elkins fought Chaz Skelly. Darren Elkins is the spoiler. That should be his nickname instead of the Damage. Even though the Damage is fucking awesome. But I'm taking Elkins to win here. I'm picking Elkins to win a decision. I will absolutely bet on Elkins to win by round 3. I will bet on Pearce to win by round 3 finish too as well. I think just the way both these guys fight. But I'm going with my guy Elkins. I think Elkins can take him down. Pearce was taken down by Makwan Amirkhani. We've seen him out-wrestled. But Elkins is a guy that I think is fighting someone that can allow him to shine. Jonathan Pearce is not someone who's gonna, he doesn't have the concussive power like Chad Mendes. He's not gonna run through Elkins on the feet. In fact, I think Elkins can succeed on the feet against Jonathan Pearce. He has that moving in and out, tight boxing, Darren Elkins, which is all complemented by the threat of his wrestling. But I think it's enough for him to find a little success on the feet, and that's all moot anyway. It's all coming down to the wrestling. I think Darren Elkins is a sharp enough wrestler to take Pearce down, and I know he's got the cardio and the heart where, if push comes to shove, he'll at least be there in round 3, trying his hardest and his damnedest. So I'm taking Elkins. And at plus 335, I've absolutely pounced on it. I think they got this one wrong. The odds are way too wide. I did expect Pearce to be a favorite coming into this one, but I was blown away by the odds here. And I know Elkins looks like the sloppiest fighter that ever lived every time he's fought, but he's been in the UFC for 12 years or whatever, just under the radar the whole way until he started getting these finishes. Then he started getting more fanfare and whatever, but he was... Even without the fanfare, he was around for 7 years without fanfare for a reason. And it's because he's a tough son of a bitch that grinds out victories. The grittiest fighter that ever lived. And I'm betting on him here. So I'll take Elkins at plus 335. The prop bets, of course, Elkins by round 3 plus 2,500. And submission round 1 plus 2,000 just for the hell of it, because that's the way Pearce has been defeated twice and almost thrice if you count the Lozon victory as a, whatever. It was a TKO, but I'm saying he lost on the ground, and it was primarily jiu-jitsu and wrestling that did it. But Elkins via decision is plus 500. So that would really be my inclination, but it's too close. I'd rather just take the juicy money line at plus 335. I can put that in parlays. And Pearce, I think if he gets Elkins out of there, it'd be via TKO as opposed to submission, even though anything's possible when you got someone smothered against the corner of the cage. So I like Pearce by knockout, TKO really, plus 700, plus 1,300 for rounds 2 and 3. Because that's how I see this fight ending really for either fighter if they get a finish in rounds 2 or 3. And I only bet on Elkins to win via submission round 1 because that's how Pearce has lost twice in his 4 losses. And again, the other one, Lozon, was in round 1 and on the ground. But yeah, I'll take Elkins especially at those odds. And I really hope he can get it done here. He's up against it, no doubt. I see what everyone else sees, but I'm not sure they see what I see. So I'll go with Darren Elkins. Next up, Tracy Cortez. I forgot her first name for a second. Versus Amanda Ribas. This is a damn good fight at flyweight here. Ribas, of course, had a tooth and nail battle with Caitlin Chukagian. She lost a decision there, and I did think she lost, but she had some success. And she could have some success here against Cortez, but I think this is an even worse matchup than Chukagian for Ribas. I like Cortez to win this one. I think she's a little bigger, a little stronger, and a much better wrestler. I almost said a much more better wrestler. But yeah, I think it's a favorable matchup for Cortez. You know, Ribas does have athleticism, and she does have a good head and arm choke, and she's got damn good jiu-jitsu. But Cortez, despite being submitted early, I think her first fight to Sherry Maraski, she's been the dominant grappler. She's taken out some really good fighters, including Erin Blanchfield and Melissa Gatto and whoever the hell else. And I expect her overall to win this fight via top control. So they're even odds, minus 115 for each fighter. Ribas, she was knocked out twice, but they were to Marina Rodriguez and Poliana Viana, two of the better and most dangerous strikers ever at that weight, or at 115, I should say. But those were two losses at 115. That had me thinking Cortez could get a knockout because she's a bigger girl and blah, blah, blah. But she's only got one TKO in her 10-1 career. And it's not a knockout. It's not on the feet. So I like Cortez to win this fight. I do think she wins the overall grappling battle. And I think it's a particularly bad matchup for Ribas. I was surprised by the odds. I really like it minus 115. And it's close enough to the decision line at plus 120 that I'll just play the money line and attach it to parlays. But Tracy Cortez is the pick. And this is one I'm pretty high on. You know, if I had to give you, which I probably should do for every pick, I would say I'm not big on it. I'm big on this one. If I had to give it a number, it'd be like an 8 out of 10. All right. Next up, Levy versus Genaro Valdez. This is going to be a good one. You know, I think Genaro Valdez is fucking awesome. Maybe not as a fighter, but as a fighter to watch, he's awesome. I don't know if he's long for the UFC. He's 10-1 overall, 7 KOs, 3 submissions, and the one loss came to Matt Frivola via TKO, which could have easily been a KO. He was knocked around like 5 times in that fight, knocked down, and then Frivola got on top and never let him up, pounded him out from the back mount. He's fucking awesome, Valdez. Awesome to watch, but I don't think he's going to be long for the UFC here. Levy, I do think he's... I like what I see from Levy. He's a much more composed fighter. I think he's more dangerous than he lets on with his hands, which is why I like the knockout prop bets here. Also because they cover the TKO, which is probably more likely. But Valdez, you know, for a guy that was knocked down 4 or 5 times in this UFC fight, it's got me concerned with his chin. Plus, he's a wild striker anyway, whose style invites trouble. And Levy, even though he's 7-1 with 0 knockouts, he's got visible power on the feet, and he's got good striking. I think he's got good hands and kicks up the middle. He's able to fight long, and it's all a means to an end, which is his grappling. And his grappling, even though it's produced 4 decisions and 3 submissions, I like the KO prop bets because they're so juicy, the TKO prop bets. But really, I expect Levy to win this fight. I do think generally he gets a finish. It'd probably be more likely to be a decision, but there's too many unknowns. I can't really trust anything in this one, but I'm going with Levy. Money line is minus 190. He is more inclined to win a decision, and I do think that's what he'll be winning. You know, that's the majority of his careers and of his victories in the UFC will be decisions, as opposed to submissions or TKOs, certainly. But the money line is playable here because it's under 200, you know, minus 190. And Valdez, I just don't trust his durability. I haven't seen him go to a decision, let alone lose a decision here. So much like I was talking about with Teresa Bleda and whatever, just, you know, I expect, he already got his first loss out of the way, but I expected it to be a TKO loss. Most young fighters. And even though he's 30 years old, it's not like he's some kid. But still, he fights like a young fighter. And I think Levy, despite having less experience, he fights like an older fighter, and I expect him to win this. Whether he slows it down or speeds it up and gets a decision, or Valdez just burns himself out. There's probably room for Valdez to win via round 1 knockout, a prop. I didn't even look to it, though. I'm just taking Levy, plainly, in this one. Levy gets it done. Gun to my head, I guess I'll go round 2 submission, but that's not what I'll be betting on. Next fight, Francis Marshall versus Marcelo Rojo. This is an interesting one. Francis Marshall, he's 6-0. He's got 4 submissions, 2 decisions. I think the 4 wins are via rear naked choke, and 2 of them come in round 3, which is relevant when breaking this fight down. He's a minus 165 favorite, 23 years old, 5'9", and he's fighting Rojo, who is 34 years old, 5'8". Rojo is 16-8, much deeper resume. He's got 8 TKO wins, or KO TKOs, 6 submissions, 1 decision. His 8 losses are 1 TKO, 5 submissions, 2 decisions. I think I like Marcelo Rowe in this fight. And it's not like I love him. I just like what I've seen from him, where I think he's the kind of guy that can teach Francis Marshall a lesson. Marshall's a guy that, every one of his wins includes him out wrestling his opponent, and I do expect him to out wrestle Rojo, but I think in the in-between moments, I expect Rojo to be too dangerous and too seasoned, where I think he can make Marshall pay in the 4th or 5th minute of any round, really. So I like Rojo to win. Of course, he could win a decision. He was seconds away from winning a decision over Charles Jourdain in his UFC debut, I think. So Rojo is a skilled fighter, very skilled. He's been submitted in the majority of his fights, though, but they're good fighters. John Castaneda, whoever the hell else, some Kyler Phillips, and the other guys that were submitted him. I didn't write them down, but they're good submission artists. It's not like he's some bum by any means. Francis Marshall via submission is absolutely a possibility. I would play that, and I will play that, in addition to him winning via round 3, because I didn't mention this, but Rojo's last 4 losses are via round 3. 3 of them via submission in round 3, 1 of them via TKO in round 3. But for a guy to have 4 consecutive round 3 losses, that's an anomaly. That makes the Andrew Sanchez law now the Marcelo Rojo law. Bet on his opponent to win via round 3. Francis Marshall to win via round 3. The odds aren't great, but for him to win via round 3 submission plus 1,100, which that sounds great, but it's not great prop-wise and whatever for such a tight fight. But still, I think there's money on that because, again, you just look to records for consistencies, and that's a consistency. 4 consecutive third-round finishes. He's been submitted in 5 of his 8 losses, and Francis Marshall's got 4 rear naked chokes, and he's the better wrestler and expected to have top control here. So Marshall would be the pick if you were smart, but I'm not smart. I'm going with Marcelo Rojo. I really like what I see, everything but the wrestling. And I think he's going to tame the newcomer and teach him a lesson. So I like Rojo to win. In fact, I like Rojo's submission odds. I think they're way off. Way, way, way off. Plus 4,000, plus 4,500, plus 6,000 for him to win submissions. Of course, if they just had a flat submission line, it would probably be whatever, plus 1,500 or something for him to win by submission in the whole fight, which is insane. Bet on Rojo. If you have prop bet, money to spare, Rojo via submission is just something I can't pass up. But overall, I like Rojo plus 135 because it can go in the money line. And for a finish, again, there's no flat finish prop, so I played the individual rounds, 500, 800, 1,600, even though I'm more inclined to say he gets the finish in rounds 1 and 2, plus 500 and 800 for Rojo to get a finish. I just think he's one of those guys who's too good everywhere else that Francis Marshall isn't. So I'm taking the guy with the deep resume and the 24 fights over the guy with the 6 fights. He's got 4 times the experience. He's got enough of experience in terms of minutes in the UFC. And enough offensive prowess where I think if Francis Marshall isn't thoroughly dominant, he's going to run into some trouble. Of course, I don't know everything about Marshall. Marshall, I want to see him face adversity. He could be one of those guys who could just take it. He can take it, yeah, sure, no problem. And he can handle adversity, fight through some shitty moments, and again, battle his way back to the ground. Or maybe he deals with some shitty moments on the ground and fights through them. You don't know these things with an undefeated fighter, but I'm betting against him. All right, and the first fight of the night, Yasmin Jaregui. I don't know. I said it right, I think, the last fight. Versus Estela Nunes. This is an interesting one. Jaregui is 9-0. She's got 6 TKO victories, 3 decisions. She's only 23 years old, and she's 5'3". She's fighting Estela Nunes, who's 30 years old, 5'4", and 6'3". And she's got 2 inches of reach as well. Estela Nunes is a good fighter who, fell apart against Sam Hughes. She's been taken out in round 3 by rear naked choke by Ariana Canellosi. Round 2 to Angela Lee over in 1, who's a killer, if you don't know her. And that was an anaconda choke. I watched that before. And Sam Hughes took over the fight and won, I think, a majority decision against Estela Nunes, where Estela started strongly and just minute by minute she fell off. And by the end of the fight, it was Sam Hughes dominating her on the ground. And it was not a good look for Estela Nunes. But Estela still, I find myself siding with her to win this fight here, Jaregui's looked really good. She's got great hands, and I do think she's going to be better overall in the 3rd round. But she's still inexperienced. 3 of those wins come in one night, so whatever. I don't want to say, they don't count or anything. But I'm just saying, 3 wins come in one night. It just makes, she's had 7 nights of fighting, not 9 as a professional. But still, she's over in Combate kicking ass. In that 8-woman tournament, she got 2 knockouts and 1 submission and 1 decision. So she's done what she needed to do, and that's why she's a minus 320 here. But I'm finding myself siding with Estela Nunes. I think Estela is good at counter-striking, really good on her feet. I think she's going to be able to... I think she's winning round 1, to be honest, on the feet against Jaregui. And I don't trust her gas tank, even though it held up particularly strongly against Mei Yamaguchi in a fight that was pretty close. Could have gone either way, but still the difference maker was her 3rd round effort, which is a nice contrast to her UFC effort against Sam Hughes and her 3rd round loss to Canellosi. But I like her here. Again, too many unknowns. Jaregui, I want to see what she looks like in her first loss. She's only 23 years old. Some Teresa Bleda shit going on here. And I think Estela Nunes has only lost to really good fighters, proven fighters. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if she lost here. She's a plus 240 underdog, but I see enough value in her where I'm picking her. I'm not only betting on her, I'm picking her to win. I think, she's not going to be dominated on the ground. Jaregui is not she's not going to be, she's got grappling or whatever, but she's not Canellosi or Angela Lee, certainly. And Estela Nunes, or even Sam Hughes. And Nunes just doesn't have a pretty record. It's 6-3, but it's deceptive, and I really like her skills. I think there's a lot of room for her to win and teach the newcomer a lesson. I'm looking for her to win with counter-striking, and I'm looking for her to circle out and, defend takedowns and, again, win the battle with her reach, her height, and her power throughout 15 minutes. Estela Nunes plus 240. I would bet on the decision, which I didn't even write down, but plus 240 covers the decision and the lesson, like Teresa Bleda suffered, where you get finished. So I just like the money line, plus 240. All right, let's see. I'm going to recap the bets now here after fucking 70 minutes. I'm going to recap the bets. Wonderboy Thompson versus Kevin Holland. I like Wonderboy winning plus 400. Fight could go either way, and I know Wonderboy's a significant underdog, a sizable underdog, but his decision odds should closely reflect his money odds, his money line odds here, and they don't. Even if you're sure Kevin Holland wins, you have to look at that and say, yeah, that's pretty enticing. Plus 400 for Wonderboy to win a decision. I would take that over anybody, against anybody. So that's not only my prediction, it's my bet. And for a prop bet, I've played it pretty heavily. RDA versus Brian Barberena. I've bet prop bets on Barberena to win via knockout, especially in round 1, plus 1,800, but I don't like it. I like RDA to win a decision, and I don't think it's worth it at minus 125. I'd want plus odds, so I'm staying away from this generally. Nicolau versus Schnell. I have a lot of shit going on for this. The minus 110 for under 2.5 rounds is what I've played, attached to a lot of parlays. I really like the offensive prowess and the defensive holes with both fighters. I could see either one knocking the other one out or submitting the other one. And I know you're saying, it sounds like it's a toss-up. Why don't you just bet on the plus 280 for Schnell? Because I'm more confident in the under, and I really am picking Nicolau to win. I like Nicolau by knockout as well, rounds 1 and 2, plus 650 and plus 900. And Schnell by round 1 flat, plus 800. I think Schnell's got nifty jiu-jitsu where he can, especially from his back, he can submit anybody despite being quite submittable himself. And even though he's only got two KO victories, they're both KOs, both in the first 20 seconds of the fight. I've never seen them, but they happen in 20 seconds of the fight. And those are the only 2 ways Nicolau has lost, by first round knockout to good UFC level fighters. So Schnell, round 1 prop, plus 800. I'll play it. Next up, Tuivasa versus Sergey Pavlovich. I am not betting on this one. I'm not touching this one. I do think Sergey wins by first round knockout, but I'm not comfortable betting on that. I know you're thinking if it's a toss-up, why don't you just play Tuivasa's odds? I might, but overall, I don't trust him either. Gun to my head, I'd go Sergey wins via first round knockout, but not betting on it. Jack Hermansson, I like him winning the money line, minus 190. My prediction is he wins a decision, but I don't trust Dolidze's gas tank. Dolidze could knock out Jack Hermansson. I probably should have sprinkled some prop bets there, but Jack's pretty damn tough. And as wild as Dolidze is, it would have to be something wild, like some, spinning shit like he hit Pasternak with. Because I think Jack, despite being the shorter guy and the smaller guy overall, he's much more technically sound. And maybe there's room for a submission prop bet. If Dolidze gets, going with those leg locks, he could fall right into a guillotine. I don't know how you fall into a guillotine with a leg lock, but I've seen guys get tangled up in that way. I think it would invite top pressure, top position from Jack Hermansson. It's a bad move. Of course, I said that last time, and he ripped up Phil Hawes' leg before knocking him out. Anyway, Anders versus Kyle Daukaus. I like Kyle Daukaus winning this one. My prediction is he wins a decision, and I played that slightly at plus 125, but I've also put something on the prop bets, plus 750 for round 1 submission, plus 1,000 for round 2 submission. I think, Anders is too sloppy. I could see him, especially if he gets hurt, getting submitted, and even if he doesn't, I could see him falling into a choke here, despite only having been submitted once, and it was by Andre Nunes. But anyway, Philip Rowe versus Nico Price. I'm taking Nico Price, but I'm taking his money line because I don't like his decision line. I like his decision line, but I don't trust it. And he's Nico Price, who's a bona fide finisher. He's fighting Rowe, who's been knocked out once early in his career, but he hung tough against Gabe Green, and I do respect his toughness. I like Rowe winning via KO, to be honest, as prop bets. Rowe has plus 1,000 to win via round 1 knockout, and then 1,500 and 2,200. I think Rowe has physical advantages in this fight, sizable reach, 4 or 5 inches, and he's shown to have really good power, just not really good striking, which, whatever. But, Nico Price is my pick. If he doesn't win a decision, get a knockout, he'll get a knockout from his back with some back elbow or some shit. Angela Hill versus Ducote. I'm not betting on this. I'm not even picking it. I think I picked Ducote to win the decision, but next. Guida versus Holtzman. I like Holtzman winning a decision plus 175. I've also bet on Guida to win by knockout round 1 plus 1500. It's a bet against the chin. Guida's only really knocked out Lozon standing, but he's clearly got strike and he's got the movement and whatever and the speed. But it's Holtzman, he's only been knocked out to Gamrot and Benil Dariush. And that was with some spinning shit. So it's not like I have no faith in his chin. It's just the guy, both these guys are almost 40. Guida is 40, but for Holtzman, 39 years old, coming off a 1.5-year layoff and coming off 2 knockout losses. Even if they were both the fucking Mirko Krokop, it doesn't matter. It's a 39-year-old with 2 knockout losses. So despite fighting Clay Guida, I'm betting against his chin with a round 1 knockout. But really the bet and the prediction is Holtzman wins a decision, wins with his power and anti-wrestling, plus 175. Michael Johnson versus Mark Diakese. I want to see the submission props for Diakese. His round 2 prop is plus 1,850 for him to win flat, which is kind of enticing, but I didn't bet on it. I just want to see the submission props because I'm hoping they're astronomical. But Diakese is the prediction, but the bet is Johnson. Johnson winning a decision at plus 400. I have a lot of faith in Diakese's chin, despite being cracked maybe once against Hooker. But Johnson, his path to victory is a decision here, and it doesn't closely reflect his money line. It's plus 400 as opposed to plus 240. So I'll play Johnson plus 400. Darren Elkins versus Jonathan Pearce. I like that Darren Elkins. I mean, the odds are just too wide for me not to play him. Plus 335. Elkins is my favorite fighter. I know every one of his weaknesses and strengths. I see what everyone else sees, but I'm not sure they see what I see. I like Elkins to win flat, really. I've played props. Elkins to win by round 3, flat, 2,500. Elkins to win by submission round 1, which is, not likely to happen at all, but it's plus 2,000, and it covers, I think, how Pearce will lose the majority of his losses as of now, and going forward, how I think he'll lose. And I've also played Pearce to win by knockout, or TKO, really. That's what I mean. Rounds 2 and 3, plus 700 and plus 1,300. I see what everyone else sees. Pearce is a younger, better version of Elkins. These guys are both, whatever you call it, comeback artists. They build, and Pearce is a damn good wrestler. He's not going to be easy to out-wrestle, but Darren Elkins is a tricky fighter, and I'm siding with Elkins to win some sort of a, battle like he did against Chaz Skelly many moons ago. Tracy Cortez I'm betting on, minus 115. That is a big bet of mine, minus 115. I've put it in parlays, but I've also played it straight. You could get her at decision, plus 120. To beat Amanda Ribas, who's never been submitted, but she's been knocked out twice at strawweight, but the killer strawweights, Marina Rodriguez and Poliana Viana, is a fucking killer. So there's no shame in that. I don't think her chin is at risk here against Cortez, who she's got 1 TKO victory, but Cortez is bigger, stronger, and I think the better wrestler, which, I'm expecting wrestling to beat judo here. Pretty comfortably. Minus 115, Tracy Cortez. Natan Levy. I like him to win. His money line is minus 190, and his prop bets are KO, 900, 1,200, 1,800 for him to win via KO, which, I guess I'd like them to be a little juicier, but I was hoping to cash in on that because I think Valdez... I don't trust his chin after being knocked silly by Frivola 17 times in 3 minutes. And then on the ground, as we saw, he was beaten on the ground from the back mount, where Levy should theoretically find his success. And he lost via TKO, which, may be more of a Frivola issue. He made, Frivola's more of an arm triangle or a TKO guy, perhaps, whereas Levy will find the submission. But I like the prop bet, especially the round 1 prop bet for plus 900 because it's a bet against Valdez's chin, and I think Levy's got underrated striking. But the primary bet here is Levy via... The pick is Levy via submission round 2, and Levy money line minus 190 is the primary bet because it covers the prediction and the horseshit fantasies. Marcelo Rojo, I like him in this one. Can't say I love him, but I like him at plus 135, even plus 140, I believe. And prop bets galore for this one. I like Francis Marshall to win via round 3. Round 3, especially round 3 submission, plus 1,100. Marcelo Rojo's been defeated in his last 4 losses. He's lost in round 3. They're all to good fighters and particularly good submission artists, but they're all in round 3. That is an anomaly. And you may as well pounce on it and bet against them. So I like Francis Marshall to win plus 1,100 round 3 submission. But I also like Rojo to win by submission. His submission odds are way off. This guy's got, I think, I don't know, 16, 17 wins or whatever. And he's got 6 submissions. And his odds are plus 4,000, plus 4,500, plus 6,000 for him to win via submission. Especially those first 2 rounds I've played. 4,000 and 4,500. Just, you know, another fantasy or whatever, but still, I think they got those way off. Generally, though, I think Rojo gets it done via finish in rounds 1 and 2, and those are plus 500 and plus 800 for him to get the finish. More likely, I think it'd be hands, obviously, you know, or striking overall. But I think he's got enough offensive prowess to take out a young newcomer who's questioning himself in the middle of a fight. You know, so I like Rojo there. But I see when everyone else sees it Marshall, I understand why he's a favorite. And again, his wrestling will be there for him. You know, he's going to get a takedown, win or lose. And Nunes. I like Estela Nunes at plus 245. I guess, gun to my head, I'd go with her winning a decision. But, you know, Jaregui is a young fighter, really young. And she's inexperienced, despite being 9-0. 3 of those fights come in one night, which I guess only makes her look better. But I somehow spun it where she looks worse having done that. But I think Nunes, even though she doesn't have the most experience herself, she's a more seasoned fighter, and she's got a deeper resume. And the losses she's suffered, I don't see Jaregui following that blueprint. You know, like Angela Lee, Canalosi, Sam Hughes even. On the feet, I think Nunes she's in this fight. I like her counter-striking. And at plus 245, that's my prediction and my bet. So I think she gets it done. All right, that's it for me, guys. This was a long video for me, 80 fucking minutes. And I'm sure it was long for you, but, you know, let me know if you like it this way, if you'd rather me do, you know, fight-by-fight videos where I overload your subscription feed with 15 fucking videos. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. And don't forget to check out Vitamin Water, Tropical Mango, Refresh. These guys have believed in me from the beginning. All right.